You got to have an ability to know how to stir things up and wind people up. I like to annoy all the right people. Well, I remember Donald Trump telling me when he got to the White House, he put 4 TVs in his bedroom. And he'd look at the TVs, and if he didn't like what was on the screen or if it wasn't about him, he'd just pull his phone out and tweet something. And next thing, they'd all change in real time. And I kind of related to that. It was like, if I wake up in the morning and I'm not trending, I was like, there's a problem. As Churchill said, free speech is about listening to views you just don't agree with, but allowing people to have different views.
It's funny, I went around the world when I was running my marketing business before I resigned. And I used to have one slide on my presentation deck that had your face on it. And do you know who else's face was on that same slide deck? I went all around the world with this presentation, met with Apple, Amazon. I had Piers Morgan, Katie Hopkins, Kanye West, and Donald Trump. And I used to tell people that there's a very important thing to learn from these 4 people, because whether you like them or not, in marketing, the least profitable outcome is indifference when you don't care either way.
Yeah.
And people have an opinion. It's funny because, I was talking to the girls on my team here yesterday, and they don't always agree with you, but they're always listening.
Yeah.
And sometimes, on the COVID issues or this issue, they'll be behind you and then they'll be against you. But do you realize strategically the art of being the center of conversation?
Yes.
And what are the principles? If it's a brand trying to be relevant or the center of attention, or if it's a person in their personal brand, for you, what are the principles for one to replicate what you've done with that?
Confidence. In yourself, self-belief.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I have is a lot of self-belief. I remember a friend of mine, Kevin Peterson, the cricketer, his big mantra with himself when he played cricket for England was back yourself. Back yourself. Whoever you're facing. He was one of the few players in history to demolish Shane Warne at his peak in the 2005 Ashes series, because he backed himself to smash him. It's risky.
As I've seen from your career.
It's risky, but as Wayne Gretzky, the greatest ice hockey player in history, said brilliantly, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You got to take risks in life. You got to learn from failure. Mars, the confectioners, used to celebrate chocolate bars that didn't work more than they did chocolate bars that worked. They worked on the assumption that most of their bars would work. They tested them, and knew what they were doing. So most of their new bars would work. But if they occasionally had a failure out of nowhere that stunned everyone, they would celebrate that, because they reckon they learn more from the failure than they did from the endless success. And I agree. I've learned more from failures than success. Success is easy. When you're successful, everyone wants to have a piece of the pie. And I've had great success, and I've had wonderfully, cataclysmic moments of doing. And when you get the doing, the old cliche, you find out who your friends are, is completely true. You find out who your friends are. You find out who actually cares about you, who's prepared to stand up for you. I remember after my dramatic departure from Good Morning Britain, Sharon Osbourne tweeting that I was entitled to my opinion. She knew by doing that there could be massive repercussions for her, given how incendiary the whole debate was. It cost her job.
That was the first point. There was confidence in backing yourself.
Yes. I think the other thing, you've got to have a bit of bravado, a bit of chutzpah. You've got to have an ability to know how to stir things up and wind people up. I like to annoy all the right people who are so permanently offended by everything. They're easy to wind up. Do I enjoy that? Yes. I love sometimes just putting a tweet out. I mean, the vegan sausage roll debate was one of the funniest things ever. I had the flu on holiday in Italy. I was in bed sweating with a raging fever. And I saw Greg saying, the wait is over. Finally, it's here, the vegan sausage roll. I said, what on earth are you talking about? Who's been waiting for a vegan sausage roll? Apart from anything else, I agree with the French, where it's illegal to market vegetarian or vegan products using meat language. A sausage roll is meat. If vegans want to eat their gruel, fine. Go and have a joyless existence, munching your lentils. Don't take my language. Don't pretend your sausage rolls are real sausage rolls. They're not. They're tasteless, and they've got more calories than a McDonald's cheeseburger. So my point is, do I care? Look, I don't care as much as I do about Ukraine, but in the moment, it really annoyed me that there was a presumption we'd all been waiting for a vegan sausage roll. And I was also annoyed that you were seeing stories of vegans charging into state restaurants and playing music of cows being killed. I was like, shut up and go away. I don't come into your gruel restaurants ever and shout about what you do to the bee community in California when you eat your almonds and almond milk, right? Billions of bees exterminated every year in a 6-week cull in California so vegans can eat almonds and eat avocados.
But do you care about vegan sausage rolls?
I care about the hypocrisy that surrounds the debate, actually. So anyway, I did a tweet saying, this is ridiculous. And everyone went nuts. I wasn't allowed to think that this was ridiculous. I had to agree that vegan sausage rolls are fantastic. Everyone goes bonkers. Greggs love it because they sell, I think, about $1 billion worth more of their products that year. In fact, the CEO thanked me personally at the end of year results. So they cleaned up. In fact, I'm thinking about going to a business where all I do is take big checks from companies to attack their products. I'll probably make a fortune. But the whole thing just showed me that everyone was allowed to love vegan sausage rolls, but if you deviated from that and said you hated them, you had to be destroyed. This wasn't acceptable. The woke brigade had decided vegan sausage rolls were untouchable. You had to support them. You had to think they were great. This was brilliant. Even though they're bad for you, literally worse for you than a McDonald's cheeseburger in terms of salt and calorie intake. And even though the whole thing was predicated on this utter hypocrisy around vegan food, that somehow they're leaving the animals alone when they exterminate the little guys, the bees. And I feel sorry for the bees. No one you ever hear vegans talk about bees, do you? It's always the big animals. They care about cows, not the little guys. I'm a little guy. I'm the Robin Hood of this debate. I look after the little guys against the sheriffs of Nottingham.
Sure. When I think about that, so, okay, you play that, you play, you know, I know from what you've said here, you know that part of it is a game. And it's a very profitable game.
It's all fun, right? Yeah. To a point. But there's also a serious point behind it, which is that actually the vegan food business is a massively burgeoning business, and that's fine. People want to eat that, that's fine. But I do agree with the French that actually you shouldn't be allowed to pretend what you're doing is meat related, because it's not. So there's a genuine point there, which I do feel quite strongly about. The French have made it illegal. You can't use meat language to sell vegan products. I think we should go the same way. You have your world and we'll have ours.
You know, your career has been pretty filled with these moments of like where you are the center, the orbit of sort of, you know, debate and controversy. When you go for a period and people aren't tweeting at you abuse and stuff and they're not kicking off, do you feel a little bit like, fuck, I've made a mistake?
Well, I remember Donald Trump telling me when he got to the White House, he put 4 TVs in his bedroom. And he used to wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock because he doesn't sleep. And he'd look at the TVs, and if he didn't like what was on the screen or if it wasn't about him, he'd just pull his phone out and tweet something. And next thing, they'd all change in real time. Breaking news. President Trump says blah, blah, blah. And I kind of related to that. It's like if I wake up in the morning and I'm not trending, it's like, there's a problem. And I have to deal with it. So yeah, look, I'm in the opinion business. It's very lucrative for me. I make a lot of money out of it. I get a lot of notoriety and fame out of it. People love me or hate me, but you know, that's part of being in the opinion business. If you don't want to be loved and hated, then you don't express opinions about anything. And that way, to me, madness lies. You know, I'd much rather be, it's like the old, again, Churchill. You know, he said that if you've got enemies, it means that at some stage in your life, you stood up for something that you believe in. Good. That's good.
When you've had those, you call them catastrophic events in your life where, you know, and
other people see them as catastrophic. I've never really seen it that way myself. Like when I got fired from the Mirror, for example, after 10 years, other people were far more agitated about that and thought it was far more cataclysmic than I did.
The Mirror, Good Morning Britain. And this was the other thing about your story, which I found really, I wanted to ask you about, is you have these ups and then these downs, and then these ups and these downs. And your Twitter bio, I think, is probably quite an apt summary of maybe your views on this, which is, I can't remember it exactly, but one day you're the cock of the walk.
One day you're the cock of the walk, the next a feather duster.
Yeah. So, and then I read that, you know, after like the Mirror situation, you slept a lot.
Yeah.
And then also it seems that after every firing or getting pushed out, whatever, you go and get pissed.
Yeah.
So,
well, again, Churchill, who I love, as you may have gathered. Again, Churchill, who's now being reviled by the woke brigade. Of course, because he saved the world from Nazi Germany. So, of course, he has to be destroyed. But Churchill, you know, he also said that the best definition of success is going from failure to failure with no discernible loss of enthusiasm. Now, I think I've had a lot of success and occasional failure, but I don't look upon any of the downs in the same way that other people do about my career. I'm very relaxed about my level of success and failure. I think it's all been greased to the mill. Normally, I've left somewhere in explosive circumstances and it's led to something better.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.